So, FM23 is still a long way away just yet, but that doesn't mean that we can't dream, we can't think of what we'd like to see in the next instalment of the Football Manager series. A lot of us, of course, if you're watching these videos, you probably love Football Manager, you love FM22, as many of us do, but there's always a couple of extra things that I think they could add, and this video, we're going to talk about them. We've asked you guys on Twitter, I've asked a few other people that I know within the Football Manager community, so let's see what they say. I'll give my thoughts too on what we'd like to see in FM23. Welcome everybody to the FMSCOUT channel. My name's Jake and today we'll be going through my FM23 feature wish list. Before we do though, big thing to say, what I want you guys to do in this video before you skip ahead is put in the comments what you'd like to see in FM23, whether it's 10 things, one thing, a big thing, a small thing, it doesn't matter. Put your feature requests, if it is, in the comments down below. That way we can see all the ideas that everyone's collated. I'm sure the better ones will rise to the top through likes and whatever it is. Obviously that doesn't mean anything will happen with it, but someone might see it. But mainly I'm just interested to hear what you guys would do to make Football Manager a better experience. Before we get into it though, don't forget to like the video if you enjoy, and a quick word over to our sponsors. Yes, this video is sponsored, so thank you to the guys over at SPITCH. SPITCH is a fantasy football app available for people in the UK and Ireland, as well as Germany and Austria, over the age of 18. You might have heard me talking about SPITCH before, you might have even played it, but if you haven't, SPITCH is slightly different to other fantasy football apps and games. Instead of making a team over the course of a season, you're actually going to build your team each week for individual tournaments, and in these tournaments you can win real prizes. Whether it's for the free competitions or the paid competitions, there are rewards to be won, and it's great fun. You should see me making my team on screen right now. If you want to get involved, all you need to do, head to the description, click on that link, we'd greatly appreciate that. Then from there, you'll download the app, you'll register. If you're in the UK, you might have to show your ID to register, and then you select your team, you select your captain, and there's also statistical analysis in the SPITCH app to allow you to pick the best players possible, get the most points possible, and prove that you are the best fantasy football manager around. Check it out in the description. Thank you for listening, and now let's get back to the video. So with all that covered, let's get right into my FM23 wish list. We're going to be using my Villarreal save I'm doing a series with on my channel right now, which if you want to, you can find that linked in the description. Any support over there is greatly appreciated. We're going to use this as a way to just demonstrate the ideas I might want, but most of these ideas don't come from me. They came from you guys, the community on Twitter, and also some people that I asked in the FM community. So shout out Roba, shout out TJ Mounty, and of course we got so many different answers from everyone, so many different ideas, many of which were very good, but there's some things that came up a lot that people were interested in. So I'll start off with the one that I think is the most likely out of these, I suppose. Even then, who knows what's going to happen, but I think it's the thing that does need improving a lot, and that is your set pieces, particularly your corners. I think this needs an overhaul, and many people will agree. Currently, the meta in FM22 is usually just swing it into the near post or the back post, put your big guy on it, and they score a goal from a header. But in real life, set pieces are much more than that, and for a management simulator as detailed as Football Manager, you would have thought they'd have done something else with this by now. There's a few things that could be done here. One of the first things is drawing out corner patterns, so instead of just whipping the ball in here, I'd like the idea of it being some kind of set piece routine maker where you could say, right, he plays it short to this person, my Mazzala then comes running in from the outside of the box, you play the ball through to him, he then lays it off to the guy next to him who dummies it and someone else shoots. You get the idea. Now realistically, I don't think this kind of system would be viable in Football Manager because we haven't seen too much like it in game, anything similar to that, but I do really like the idea of drawing the patterns and actually seeing that routine replicated in game. That would be pretty cool, but something that I think is pretty unlikely to happen. One thing that does need to happen though, obviously, and this will come I imagine, is a balancing out of the match engine when it comes to corners. They seem very overpowered. Now, I'm sure when they balance that out, as every game seems to be in the world, when they fix one thing that's overpowered, something else will crop up. That's just a way of gaming, but in terms of corners, that is something that does really bug me. Something that I hadn't actually thought about that my friend Roba, who works behind the scenes at FMSCOUT, brought up was the idea of a set piece coach, which you hear many of the big clubs in real life have. It's their dedicated job to create set piece routines, whether that's from corners or throw-ins or free kicks. Some teams even have specific corner coaches. Now, That wouldn't be in every single squad, of course, but much like you sometimes in a team have a lone manager, which not every team will, I think it would be pretty cool to have a set piece coach. Now that would likely come with some other changes to set pieces, because of course the set piece coach would need some actual usage. So it could be if set pieces become more advanced, that coach can then take over if you assign him the responsibility to make new routines. You don't have to come up with them. Maybe they could identify the strengths in your squads. Say you've got a 6'4" centre back, that set piece coach would design some routines to get the best out of him, and they would replicate them in training until eventually one came off in the game. Considering that this is something that a lot of teams have in real life, a set piece coach, I wouldn't be surprised if it's too far off in a football manager sense. I do think set pieces as a whole will be revamped. There's a lot more I could say on set pieces, a lot more ideas that we've got, but we're going to leave it at that for now. Leave the rest up to your imagination or your ideas in the comments. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this is probably the second most popular idea I saw everywhere. Set pieces maybe being around third. Second most popular was managing youth teams. Now, by this, what I don't mean is where you can go to your staff responsibilities and take control of their training and their tactic. I mean actually having a job, your only job being an under-23s, under-18s manager. It would add a different element to the game and would add a bit more of a challenge and maybe even realism to how a lot of coaches get their badges. For example, you might work for the Chelsea under-18s, then get a job out in League One based on how you performed with them. Who knows how it might go? But I could genuinely see this happening one day, but it's the kind of thing that everyone's asked for years, and the fact that they haven't done it makes me think maybe it's not possible in the coding in some way. I'm not a programmer, I don't know how it all works, but I feel like if this was something they could add, they would have done it by now. I really hope it is something that they consider, and I'm sure it's on every single list that they get given of requests from the fans every year. I just think it would be really cool. I think it would add a little bit more of an element to the game. Obviously, in most cases, you don't get to sign players. You're going to get your youth intakes every year. When it comes to your under-23s, if you have a great player, all of a sudden, let's say Malang Sarr is brilliant for the under-23s, Thomas Tuchel might just come in and pick him out your side and say, sorry, we're using him for the first team, and you have to deal with that. It will add a different element. You'll be focusing on developing that youth team and getting the best out of them. I just think it'd be really cool. I'm not saying it's something that would happen, but I feel like it can't be that far off. I feel like it wouldn't be too hard to do, it wouldn't be too different, and maybe it's something that we could see in the future. Now, the final big item on my wish list, big overhaul, we're going to go into a bunch of little ones in a minute, but the final big one was the one that everyone suggests, the one that you probably are waiting for, some kind of stadium builder. Now, I love the idea of this. I'm not sure we'll get an actual stadium builder, you know, like, oh, we've given you £100,000 budget for the stadium, and you draw a big set of seats going one way and the other corner is completely empty. I don't think it'd be like that, but I'd love to be able to view my stadium and my facilities. Let's say how we've got this image here. I'd love to be able to click into that, and much like you see your players playing in the stadium in an in-match environment, it would take you to an empty stadium and you can kind of just pan the camera around, take a look around. I think that'd be quite satisfying to see it growing over time. Obviously, they could add some kind of stadium designer element into it, but this being a football manager simulation game, I'm not so sure. I'm not sure they'd do anything like that, but it wouldn't harm you too much to be able to view your stadiums and just advance that whole stadium section a little bit more. And on top of that, that goes alongside it, a lot of people have mentioned the idea of trophy cabinets. So if you go to your overview, of course, you get to see your trophies lined up like this, but maybe there'd be a section you can click on where it'd be a trophy cabinet looking room and you'd see all the trophies you've collected with your club or that the club has, or maybe even it would just be a manager personal section and you'll see all the trophies that you've won as a manager. It might just be satisfying to see. I'm not sure it would add too much to the game, but it's a thing a lot of people ask for, a trophy cabinet of some kind. And I do wonder how hard it would be to have a little tab on here that you click into and you see some generic variations of trophies that you've accumulated. Again, another satisfying thing to add over time as you build that trophy cabinet up. So in a second, we'll get into all of the little changes that I'd like to see in FM23 as well, that hopefully you guys will also appreciate. But those were the three main items on my FM23 wish list. From what I've heard people say and the responses we got on the Twitter post recently, these seem to line up with what you guys want as well. But in all honesty, I don't expect too many overhauls in the next few iterations of Football Manager. I feel like, I don't want to say they've peaked at where they're at, but I feel like anything they add now is just little bonus things. I can't see them completely overhauling any section of the game. But who knows, I just expect more data hub style of things. You know, the kind of things that are good to have in the game, but you might not necessarily need them to play. The things we've talked about here are cool, but they're not necessarily massively important to the way you play the game. It would just add that extra level of fun that I think we all crave when we buy a new Football Manager game, just to see something a little bit different. But let's get on to a few of the little things that I'd like to see in the game, and a lot of the people that I spoke to also agree on, so we're quickly going to blast through a few of them. Staff responsibilities. There should be a preset that you can save. I just had to check that there to check there wasn't one that I've missed all along, but there should be a preset you can save called Your Responsibilities, save it down. So anytime you start up a save, you tick that and all of the responsibilities go to what you set them to. The amount of times I start up a new save and I have to go in and set it so XYZ deals with this, XYZ deals with press conferences, this person is going to deal with training the young players. All of that stuff, I wish there was presets like there is in everything else that you could just tick and it loads it all up for you. Simple, effective, and something many people would appreciate. Team meetings and team talks can sometimes be a bit annoying in the terms of the way that they work. For example, if you have a team that's just been promoted into the Premier League, but your team is actually very good and you go and come second, and you say next season, let's get mid-table, they'll say to you, no, how can you say that? We should get relegated. And it's really annoying the way that it works. That needs an update. I'm not saying an overhaul, but it just needs to be fixed. The way that they function, whether you like them or not, it would just be a lot better if they actually function the way that they should. Fixing player ratings, particularly for certain roles and positions on the pitch, is another one. For me, I've seen defensive midfielders, deep line playmakers, even when they have a good game, the average match rating seems to be super low. It's a little thing. I think it happened with goalkeepers a few years ago as well, where they could barely get a 7. It's just a little change they could make that would just make it better, because the amount of times in my team that I find myself switching out those players, even though I know it's just because the game isn't representing their average match ratings well. Sometimes if you see Declan Rice getting a 6.9 across the whole season, despite never putting a foot wrong, you do think, well, he must be the weak point in the team, best get someone else, and then they can only get a 7. It's just one of those things I wish they'd look at a little bit, make a minor tweak to it, and hopefully get those average match ratings up for that position. Another thing that I think a lot of people would enjoy, and I don't really know why they got rid of it, I'm sure they've got their reasons, and I think they have said in the past, but for me, FM Touch was a great version of the game. It's how I started Football Manager. It's an easy way to get into the game, and it's also for people who maybe don't have as much time in their hands anymore to play full fat FM, play FM Touch. It's a lot easier, a lot more streamlined, and like the mobile version, you can kind of fly through it and just enjoy the experience without getting too bogged down in the details. They didn't have to do too many developments on it. They could have just kept it the same game as it was, but just updated the database alongside what the main game gets. A final thing that I'd like to talk about is a lot of people recently have been doing Moneyball saves, and I'd like the idea of, instead of having to download a skin, which I believe is how you do it right now, to remove attributes, you could just turn them off when you're loading up a save if you wanted to play that way. A big part of Moneyball as well is to find players using statistics, and maybe they could add a feature like this similar to the data hub. I haven't done Moneyball myself, but from what I'm aware of, you can actually go into scouting, player search filters, and find people who've completed XYZ amount of passes, crosses. I believe you can do something along those lines, but whether you can or can't do that, I think there should be a more user-friendly way to see, you know, which players are in the 99th percentile in the world for passes completed under the age of 21. There should be easy filters to make that happen. There's a good chance you can already do all this stuff, but I just wish it was in a bit more accessible area, more user-friendly to be able to find it, as opposed to adding a million filters to search for those players. So that being said, I think we've done enough items on my wishlist video. Let me know yours in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more, and if you want to check out my channel, linked in the description, and watch this Villarreal save, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day, and goodbye.